There's some incredible statistics about how many people self-define as a content creator these days, and we thought it was worth exploring that and what it means.
Yes, we're going to be talking about Charli XCX's new album and how you follow up an enormous hit like BRAT.
And we are also talking about the film website Letterboxd, one of my absolute favourite websites in the entire world, which is unbelievably brilliant, but is up for sale, and everyone's worried it might no longer be quite as brilliant. We shall find out, I suppose.
The Rest is Entertainment is presented by Octopus Energy.
Now, we're going to be talking about an expression which I hadn't heard till 7 seconds ago, which is someone getting their flowers. Can you tell me what that means?
Well, it means like you've been around a long time, but people suddenly think, hang on a second, you're amazing and you should be recognised.
So you're finally getting your due.
You're finally
getting your flowers.
And you're being garlanded. Now, I would say someone like this is someone like Jean Smart, who plays the lead in Hacks. She plays Deborah Vance. Okay, Jean Smart is extraordinary. She did a huge amount of TV and stage work, and there was a sense that she was sort of always brilliant. But then this one role came along, Deborah Vance in Hacks. They literally just give her the Emmy every year now. She gets her flowers every year. She gets her Emmy every year. As we always talk about Octopus's customer service, your account's run by about 10 or 12 people. You've got a small team.
And they know who you are.
Yes, and they are permitted to send flowers every week to a customer who might just be going through something, whatever it is. So they can recognise it's not an apology, it's just because someone was going through something and you get your flowers.
Another example of they seem to do business in a very interesting and customer-focused way. Imagine if Jean Smart is an Octopus customer, might get her flowers twice.
Yeah, every week. Okay, are we all going to be content creators? Because Illuminate, who are the entertainment data experts, they do a sort of 6 monthly report. They found an unbelievable statistic, which is that 39% of Americans now identify as content creators.
39%?
Yeah. Nearly 2 in 5 identify as active content creators across digital platforms. And I think it's interesting. The word creator in itself is you know, when everyone sort of had to stop talking about global warming and started calling it climate change, it's the word itself is now professionalized. Instead of just being like a YouTuber or an influencer, which seemed like it was from fake work, it's now, but tens of millions of people now identify as paid creators. I think that's extraordinary because we will get to the difference between, you know, just identifying someone and actually making money as one. But that means that there is a sort of massive middle class in the creator economy, which I think Goldman Sachs, they projected that next year it will be worth $480 billion, the creative economy.
And when we talk about creators, these are not just kids playing video games. These are, you know, dentists who come home at the end of the day and do dental tutorials. These are accountants who come home and talk you through spreadsheets. There is a huge amount of niche content out there, which is monetizable, which is made by professionals. But I think that 39% of everyone being a content creator might be pushing it a bit. That self-identifying thing is doing a lot of work. But there's this incredible gig economy now of people taking their professional skills, finding a niche audience, and then finding ways of monetizing that audience. It's a real thing.
Yeah, media content has become democratized incredibly fast. This has happened really, really quickly. But also the world of work is changing so rapidly that, as I say, hundreds of millions of people around the globe will identify as content creators. And that original Goldman report found that sort of 4% of them made over $100,000 a year.
I mean, that's still a lot. 4% of a lot of people.
It's a lot of people, right? But so there's a few different areas. So we should start with business before we get into the everyone of it. I was listening to something the other day with the CEO of Unilever, who's called... it's really interesting, right?
You really do have a hinterland.
Yeah, no. Yes, I do.
Yeah.
But okay, so Unilever is one of the world's largest consumer product companies. They've got masses of brands. They've got about 150 brands and things like Dove and Vaseline and Hellmann's and whatever it is.
They're one of those companies that owns all the other companies you've heard of.
Yeah, and 4 billion people sort of touch one of their products every day.
Wow.
Effectively, because they operate in 190 countries and it's kind of everything.
They don't have a product which is a Unilever.
No, they don't.
Which is a lever that does everything. That's like a kind of one of those remote controls that controls everything. A lever that does everything. If I was Unilever, that's what I'd be doing.
They have 100,000 employees. But what's really interesting is that they've almost completely replacing ads with creators.
Yeah.
They have scaled from having 10,000 paid creators. They have 300,000 paid creators.
Yeah, and this is, by the way, what we would also call influencers. This world where we say people who are selling you things. That world has changed utterly. We think of influencers as people with sort of, over 1 million followers on various things, which is what they now call a macro influencer. And the world we're talking about is the world of micro influencers, which is somewhere between 10 and 100,000 followers. So you can have 10,000 followers and be making money because Unilever, they've worked out that having a lot of small influencers is actually a much better bang for their buck than having 2 or 3 massive influencers.
Or just traditional broadcast advertising. He's presided over this complete shift away from it. He says he wants one in every zip code, every postcode around the whole world. And so instead of that kind of top-down corporate messaging, it is all social first and creator disseminated. That's one big company, but it's really interesting to see that they are already on 300,000 paid influencers.
And also,
that's
by the way,
insane.
Not just one big company, but sort of a company that's always been at the forefront of advertising. Always been at the forefront of branding and marketing and where we go next, and where they lead, an awful lot of other people will follow. So this is not going to get any smaller in the next few years, this idea of micro-influencers.
So those are the small ones. But then equally in business, you've got, people talk about this all the time now, founders can't just be, you can't just invent your thing. Documenting it and posting about it is just a huge social activity. Is a massive part of the job. And you're expected to sort of document your thinking publicly. It's not like an optional marketing strategy anymore. You have to build the product, then you have to run the company, but you have to be an always on creator. You have to
tell your story,
because there's no search traffic anymore.
And it's a familiar thing. We've all that idea that the story behind a brand is very important, and the origins of a brand is important. But now it's sort of everything at the beginning, as you say, when you're launching a product. If you go for an IPO, you can see now that Elon Musk is the most obvious example, but it happens all the way down, that the founders of a company or the chief executives of a company have to be able to tell their own story in their own space before you have an IPO. I mean, you literally sort of can't do anything in any sphere now without going on camera and telling people
without posting
what it is, without posting. I find it exhausting.
But then, so moving down from that, the sort of middle class, it's interesting that there are so many now journalists who are sort of just like have become a creator. And there's a woman who's studying all these people who are just moving away from kind of traditional legacy outlets. And she said, there's not one creator that's losing sleep wondering, is the Washington Post or the New York Times taking my audience? Because that is not happening, but the reverse is. So these big kind of legacy things, people are moving away and people are moving into these kind of individual spaces. So the next thing you have to think of is is the creator economy, is it like a content industry, or is it actually like an acquirable asset class? Clearly, like Unilever thinks it's almost like an asset class. It's, an asset class is something like shares or whatever, or real estate or bonds, or something that performs, shares similar characteristics and kind of performs in the same way in markets. So, but life has become lifestyle content. So all of these people, the supposedly private self, everybody posts all things like their pregnancy tests or their child's first steps or everything. It becomes public labor all the time. And it started with things like the mummy bloggers, and then suddenly these people who were just doing something at home and then really interestingly you saw, oh my gosh, these people are now creators. They have these huge businesses, but it's now so vast and it's everywhere. I mean, dating is completely enmeshed with it. But this idea of creator as a social identity, a lot of it is a form of, people want to say they're a creator. Why do you think that is?
It's like people have always wanted to say they're an artist. Because it's, because they are an artist at heart. That's the point. And, lots of people in their hearts are creative and they are creators. And this gives you the opportunity to self-identify as that. In the same way that very, very rich men and children of very, very rich men have always self-identified as film producers. But it's like it's a thing you can say and do. I think personally, I think it's very good to have any outlet for creativity. I also think that it's great that it's reducing obstacles to genuinely creative people to make a bit of money as well. But the idea that 39% of people self-identify as content creators is plainly absurd. But that's, I
don't think it is.
But 49% of people in Britain self-identify as working class, and we know that's not true as well. It's like you can't identify as what you want, right? There's an awful lot of right-wing bloggers who are self-identifying as content creators who don't let anyone else self-identify. And you go, but hold on, you're saying that you're a content creator, but you don't make any money. So you're self-identifying.
I wonder, yeah, but I think that money doesn't have to be involved for people to feel that. But creation is now default behavior. If you feel like if you're not doing it, then you're not participating, and that's been and obviously AI is going to further turbocharge that because it's much easier to create things. Yeah. But there's what felt like a newish category, what they call a prosumer. So you're not like just a producer, but you're also a consumer. That's now, I think it's almost a cultural norm. It certainly is if 39% of people are saying it.
Well, there's two personality types, and this ties into it, which is people who are always on transmit and people who are mainly on receive. And culturally, we've turned into a group of people who are always on transmit. And you sort of think, well, we need receivers as well. For this economy, we can't all be transmitting all the time.
But if you're a prosumer, then you're both, and that's what people are, because they're they produce stuff themselves, but they are also, the consumption is part of the participation. So going back to that thing of like the most intimate moments of people's lives are posted, but actually people are just online all the time.
Yeah.
And I've talked about this before, but you work for the platforms. People spend 5 or 6 hours on these platforms. They work for the algorithm
every day.
That is, if you did 5 to 6 hours of anything else, you would be doing what we used to call a part-time job, okay? And they have other jobs, but I actually increasingly think that their real role in the economy is the 5 to 6 hours they're spending online, powering these vast and insanely rich companies, often for free.
So micro-influencing is interesting, I think. And the reason why it's really, really taken off, because you would say about someone with 10,000 followers, is that really of any use to a brand? Now, the engagement is the absolute key, and that's what all advertisers and all marketers look for. So if you've got, say, people over 1 million followers, they get an engagement of about 1%. And by engagement, that could literally just be replying, or it can be, but the most important engagement, of course, is buying, is putting some money into the ecosystem. Micro-influencers have about 3 times that. They have like 3.2% engagement. So they've got far fewer people, but the people who are following them are far more engaged. And because it is a more personal thing, if you follow Cristiano Ronaldo, there's 600 million people following him. And so a lot of those are bots, a lot of those are not. There's lots of natural wastage there. If you've got a dentist who has 12,000 people following them, those people tend to be quite engaged. They're following for a reason. They've chosen to follow that person. They chose to follow for very niche advice. If you're a dentist, I choose dentists because there are examples of people making £1 million a year who become creators. All day, every day, you've got new patients coming in, and you're saying, "Oh, by the way, you're brushing slightly too hard," or "This is the new way to brush it," and make sure this is how I would floss, not that. And every time, every single patient is saying, "Oh, God, that's really interesting." And next time they come back in and go, "I really started flossing differently because of what you said. Thank you." It doesn't take more than a couple of years of that to think, I mean, everyone I talk to really, really likes this advice that I give. Why don't I'll sort of stick it on a video? I've got a couple of hours at the end of the day. I could do this.
Get a ring light.
Yeah, I can get a ring light. And so you show people how to brush, how to floss. You show them stuff that is obvious to you because it's in your professional wheelhouse, but might be less obvious to them. And suddenly everyone's like that one individual person. So instead of talking to one patient at a time, you talk to 12,000 people. It doesn't take long for an Oral B to go, "Oh, that's interesting. This person," lots of people seem to really, really like what they do. We will put some money into them. And by the way, just huge multiples less than you'd have to put into, someone like Stacey Solomon or someone with huge followings. We'll put some money into them. We'll see what return we get on our investment. And over the last few years, they have seen time and time and time again that they're getting really, really, really good return on their investment, that these people with smaller followers but more engaged followers are such a huge driver of the economy and people who people trust.
But Unilever have 300,000 of these, and they want to massively scale that.
What could we do?
We do. This is...
I suppose, we do this.
I'm so sorry you're involved in content creation right now.
Oh, no. God,
I know you've tried to stay away from it.
I've fallen into my own snare.
Yeah, but that is extraordinary that there are that many and they're just trying to really, really build that up.
But what's more extraordinary is that it works.
Yeah.
That's the really, really interesting thing.
It works so much better than the absolutely multiple millions and billions that they have effectively ploughed into top-down corporate-led advertising.
You see why the business of it works, and you see why this is a viable job for an awful lot of people. If you're sitting there and you have a job that you're aware you know things that other people don't know, and things that people might find useful in their daily life, you can just start doing that. Don't do the things that everyone else has done. If you want to become a beauty blogger, that's done. There's people who are amazing at that. There's brilliant at that, unless you've got a new angle. But if you're a professional person who does something interesting that people don't know about, you can make money out of that. Brands will give you money. And if people come back and you get engagement, they will give you more money and you will grow more people. That's an interesting job to do.
But everybody now works for the algorithm.
That's the problem with it, I think, that is to do this, you are relying on Instagram or TikTok or whatever platform you choose, and that can be taken away from you almost immediately. So, for example, if you're on TikTok, 2 ways of getting paid as a micro-influencer. Firstly, you get money directly from the client, from a Unilever or someone like that. They will pay you for a post, or they might put you on a retainer, depends how that works. But secondly, the place where you can really make money is that you get a share of any marketplace money coming in. So TikTok has a very good shop front, which people buy things through. You get a share of that, and that suddenly you're like, but hold on, I used to go into the dental surgery every day. Now I'm getting money every time someone buys a particular type of toothbrush. Suddenly I'm on $250,000 a year and I can just sit at home. However, TikTok tomorrow, in the same way that Facebook have done with big publishers, TikTok tomorrow could change their terms of service. TikTok tomorrow could end your business. And that's a very precarious place to be.
But all work is precarious, and that's what people think now.
I guess so. But
people think more and more that all work is precarious, and that why would you not have a side hustle doing these things and always?
Yeah, I suppose so. But if this is becoming such an enormous business, and the one thing we know about the TikToks and Instagrams and Facebooks of this world is the more money there is to be made, the more they try and rake of it, and that's probably coming out of your pocket. That I would say is it's speaking to your point about you being completely reliant on the platforms, and you are sort of working for the platforms as well.
Everybody works in the content mines now. Yeah, everybody works down the content mines.
But it's a very, very interesting way of getting, because the only way it really works is if you're good. The only way it really works is if you have authority and if people trust you and believe you, and you promote things to them that work for them, because then they return. So it has a meritocracy to it. I mean, as always, I always think of the hilarious thing of I bang on all the time about how there's fewer barriers to entry in the content these days, and how when I started in TV everyone was middle class, and then you look at some of the big YouTubers and influencers, you go, oh, you all went to public school as well. There's something happens there, but I do think it's a 39% of people saying they're content creators, and a good number of people genuinely making a living out of it in a way that didn't used to happen. You talked about journalists as well. The other side of this coin, it's not just
because it's become the kind of aspirational identity.
Yeah, but the idea now that bands and journalists and people on that side of things have their own Patreons and can get paid individually by people. Again, it's having that niche audience, but who really trust you and like you and believe in you. And if you're a content creator, I always think that podcast, Finn versus History, which is Finn Taylor and Horatio Gould, someone was telling me the other day how much money they each make a year. And it's a huge amount of money, entirely off their own back, entirely off people, paying them directly, entirely off having a group of people who love what it is that you do and being paid directly. And that, by the way, is much less platform dependent than a lot of the influencing things. There are ways and means now of making money that there didn't used to be. And I just think that, we can sort of talk about the platforms and we can talk about, oh God, everyone was a creator, but there are so many people out there now who can make a living doing this who wouldn't have been able to do it 5 years ago. Yeah, it's very powerful.
It's got a huge middle class. That's what I'm saying. Like for all economies, if they have a successful and thriving middle class, then perhaps they're going somewhere.
Yeah, this is definitely that. But it is very easy to sneer at the world of influencing, but it's gone somewhere different.
We're all going to be them.
No, I mean previously. It's I've written books where influencers have been the murder victims. I've done it too.
We Solve Murders. The first one. The next one is out in September.
It is. But, I think there is this, something has happened, something has changed, and there are a new group of content creators who can get paid directly by people to speak directly to a small...
It's a vast class of them.
But the idea of the nicheness of our culture being where the money is now, and the idea of journalists being able to write a Patreon for, not a huge amount of people, but for that to be a better living than writing a column for a national newspaper or something like that. It's there's something good in that, isn't there? There's something, isn't there, in we're destroying the hierarchy of work. This idea that you go to work for 45 years at the same place and you have a boss and your boss has a boss and your boss's boss has a boss. You are now, if you are really good at what you do, you don't have to wait 5 years to be promoted. You don't have to go and sit in a meeting where people less talented than you are telling you what to do. You don't have to constantly be sort of overlooked because somebody who went to the same school as the person you're working for wants to get the job instead. You can go home, you can turn your ring light on, you can tell people what it is that you do and how you do it. And if they think you're good, if you give value to them, then you have a completely different way of making a living. You have a completely different career. You don't have that 45 years and a carriage clock at the end of it. You have this hustle all the time, it's graft all the time, but there are ways and means of getting paid just to be yourself with your own skills.
I should say this section of the podcast is not sponsored by Big Ring Light, but if you're interested, hit me up. Shall we go to some adverts and afterwards talk about Charli XCX?
We should do, talking of macro influencers.
Yeah. This episode is brought to you by Lloyd's Rewards. Now, a big mistake that people make is leaving the cinema as soon as the credits roll because there might be a bonus scene right at the end.
They're absolutely one of my favourite things in the world. Yeah, you never know.
There used to be in Marvel ones, there used to be a mid-credit scene and then there'll be an end-credit scene.
I remember the first one I really remember, two. I remember Ferris Bueller's Day Off, where he tells you to go home at the end, but also Smokey and the Bandit with Burt Reynolds, where they would do bloopers. It just feels like a secret little glimpse into a different world.
And it doesn't quite have to be over.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just a lovely little added bonus. You've done everything. You've made your show, right? You've given everyone everything. It's just a lovely little extra.
Which is also the idea behind Lloyd's Rewards. Extra value appearing inside something you were already doing anyway, your daily banking. From shopping to streaming, you can bank on Lloyd's to help your money go further.
It's rewards like this that make 14 million people bank on Lloyd's. Search Lloyd's Rewards in your app. Eligibility criteria, terms and conditions apply. Retailer offers and cashback amounts may vary. UK residents 18+. Welcome back, everybody. Now, Charli XCX, one of the few people in show business to have a surname that's entirely made of Roman numerals, Nemanja Vidic is my other favourite, has a new album out, Marina.
Yes, it's called Music, Fashion, Film. She says it's about process.
Okay.
How did you find her, Richard?
I loved it. I think, I'm a big fan of Charli XCX. What I always find interesting, so obviously BRAT was so enormous.
That was 2 summers ago.
2 summers ago. And this idea of how you follow up something that's absolutely enormous, I always find quite interesting. What she's done is sort of what Nirvana did after Nevermind when they brought out In Utero, which is a bit scrappier, a bit kind of, no, we're not going to do this stadium stuff anymore. We're going to show you who we really are. And she sort of pared it back a bit as a bit grungier, a bit dirtier, a bit more guitar-y. So she sort of said, I'm not going to try and compete with this uber pop of BRAT. I'm actually going to show you a different side of myself, which I think is quite a smart way of following up something, because you can't get bigger than BRAT.
No, and actually, it's really interesting. BRAT was such obviously we talked about it at the time. For someone who'd been a sort of relatively niche artist, it became a complete phenomenon. And I mean, for me, I find it quite depressing that anything that talking of our monoculture, anything that feels countercultural, that hits, immediately becomes hoovered up and commodified instantly by the mainstream. I mean, some of the stuff that happened with BRAT, you would not be wanting if you were a cool and edgy pop star. I mean, do you remember during the election, Kamala Harris changing her whole page to, right? It's like, I find so much of what happened with it so awful.
There's a certain thing about being too big because everyone climbs on everything. You can't, everyone is making, as we said, everyone's making content about everything. So everyone is making content about your thing because it's the thing that people are talking about. Yeah. It's a lot.
It was really awful. And it was like the total mainstreaming of something. She's supposed to be a sort of like edgy art school kind of club girl. And I don't know. I have to say, it's difficult. Nowadays, we particularly demand reinventions and pivots, and by saying, how am I going to follow it, by more of the same, people feel they have to kind of reinvent themselves and that everyone's got to be in a series of eras, if you will. And so, I suppose she says, I'm a contrarian. This is like some kind of interstitial album, and I'm just going to do. I found quite a lot of it quite phoned in, I have to say. But I also what I do like about it is the sense that, like, after everybody piled onto BRAT and just joined the bandwagon, perhaps it will serve as some kind of fandom cull.
Which is what Nirvana did with In Utero. Yeah,
I hate these fans. I want to get rid of these new fans.
Which is very, very common. If you're Charli XCX and you're in the moment, as you say, BRAT was so enormous, but she sat and recorded that in the studio with her mates, and when it first started going massive, she sort of starts counting the money and thinks, oh my God, this is insane. And then, as you say, it goes super, super massive, and suddenly you're public property in a way that you weren't before, and suddenly everyone is thinking, what is she going to do next? That's a lot of pressure. I think if you're Charli XCX, you think, I'm going to do 20 albums in my career. They're all going to be individual ones. This is going to be a good one.
Can we talk about her time since then and what she has actually done? Because I think it's quite interesting. So you obviously have this absolute monster hit that just gets co-opted by everybody. She did The Moment, the A24 sort of mockumentary, which it's weird. I was really looking forward to that, and I found it was kind of less funny than it should have been, and it was whatever, but it's sort of about a meta version. She is becoming very, very meta anyway. Then she got a Substack because, she's an artist.
Yeah.
She talked a lot about film. She did the Wuthering Heights soundtrack.
Yeah.
And then the first single from this new album, she's saying the dance floor's dead. It's all about rock music instead. To a huge degree, it's so meta, and it's supposed to be phoned in. And like, does she get, of course she gets the joke. She gets the joke before you. In fact, you just wrote the joke. I don't mean this. Yes, I mean this. No, I don't really mean this. It's difficult when any artist gets to, we talked about this a bit with Harry Styles, to the point where, and he actually took a long time away, where you get to the stage in your career where you can only sing about what it's like to be really famous.
Yeah.
And I always think that can be quite a difficult spot.
I think, I want to talk about some of the other people who followed up massive hits and who's done it well and who's done it badly. And I think she's done it pretty well. I think she seems to be in control of who she is. She does interesting things. But I just think you can't judge on this. BRAT was so huge, and she's still Charli XCX that she was 5 years ago. She's still like a woman who just wakes up in the morning. So, she has to deal with all of that, and that's quite difficult. You look at something like the people who followed things up best. So Fleetwood Mac, when Fleetwood Mac itself came out and was like massive, like huge, and everyone's thinking, oh my God, you're never going to follow that. And there's no way you're following up Fleetwood Mac. And they followed that up with Rumours, which is by some standards one of the biggest albums of all time. They sort of just did the same thing.
Yeah.
But better.
They didn't feel they had to pivot.
Yeah.
But now we live in a period where everyone has to reinvent.
Yeah, so Nirvana did pivot, that's for sure. Radiohead is a perfect example. So the Bends, and more particularly, I think, Creep, it had been so insanely enormous. I'd say the Creep was BRAT enormous.
Yeah.
That you got these guys from Oxfordshire who'd sort of, been in a band for a while, released this song that the world had just eaten up, and they're like, oh my God, what do we do next? Easiest thing in the world there would be to do the Bends Part 2. Actually, they come back with OK Computer, which if you look back is sort of an insane masterpiece.
Yeah.
They then followed that up, by the way, with Kid A, where they go, no, this is the band we were all along. OK Computer was us just letting you know we weren't just the Bends, and then they followed that up. That's an extraordinary way to do that, and they've got longevity, and they've got that kind of life. You look in movies, you look at someone like Tarantino who has to follow up Reservoir Dogs, which again exploded like a bomb in culture. It was huge, and a huge movie. And you think, oh my God, how do you follow that up? And forget True Romance, because that wasn't his
he didn't direct.
Directing. He comes out with Pulp Fiction, which has a lot of the stuff from Reservoir Dogs, but shows the sort of genius of his filmmaking, plays about with timelines, extraordinarily iconic, builds on everything that people had loved about Reservoir Dogs and comes back with that. So, it is absolutely doable. You get someone like, Donna Tartt with A Secret History is probably the perfect example in books. So she comes out with The Secret History. I mean, it's almost impossible to have a more iconic book than Secret History. It was absolutely enormous everywhere in the world. The pressure to follow that up from the publishers, from everyone, even back in those days of culture, would have been enormous. I mean, crazily enormous. She waits 10 years, does The Little Friend, which is a great book, then waits another 10 years for The Goldfinch, which is another great book. So you can do it. You can follow up these enormous things. You can do it. But there's a lot of pressure. Most people fail. Look at Guns N' Roses after Appetite for Destruction. They're in that Use Your Illusion era.
What about the November Rain video, which is iconic?
Listen, nobody loves November Rain more than me. Harper Lee.
What about me? I like it more than you.
Oh, do you? How much do you like it? Out of 2,000. No, just asking.
I'm not playing your game.
No, I'm just interested because you said you liked it more than me.
I like it more than you.
Harper Lee and J.D. Salinger, both interesting. They're both, Catcher in the Rye and Killer Mockingbird. Harper Lee never...
Huge Brat Summers.
Huge Brat Summers,
those
two. Those are the Brat Summers of their time.
Yeah.
Harper Lee never follows up to Killer Mockingbird. She does the kind of prequel, which she'd written before. J.D. Salinger does a few short stories, but really spends 45 years writing nothing at all. I mean, that's an option you can take when you've had a massive Uber hit. Terrence Malick, after Badlands and Days of Heaven, doesn't make a movie for 20 years. It's hard to do it. And I think, Stone Roses, oh my God, the perfect example.
Yeah.
That was massive, the Stone Roses, and they think, they're going to follow this up. It's going to be amazing. And they did The Second Coming, which is absolutely fine. But it took them a long time, cost them a lot of money, and was kind of fine. I think it's good, like Charli.
But none of them had to live in the culture that we have to live in now, where you've got to be an always-on pop star. I mean, just saying the things she's done since, in the old days, she'd have gone away could have happily gone away for 3 or 4 years and then come back. She's done The Moment, she's done her Substack, she's done the Wuthering Heights soundtrack. There's a whole lot you have to do because you can never be off. You've just got to constantly produce, or you fall by the wayside.
That's why I like this album, because it's not her. She hasn't tried. She's just made a good album with her mates. And that's all. I think that's all that you can have real control of, quite apart from anything else you do in between times and who you are and how you promote yourself. When you're in the studio, that's all you can do is keep your head down, write some songs you like, record some songs you like, put them out. 2 years later, do that again. 2 years later, do that again. And I do think there's something that's incredibly noble about that. If you want to take advantage of everything in our culture and the money that's in our culture, the best artists every couple of years, look at Madonna now with the new album. They just go back in.
The new album's brilliant.
They go back in and they do it again. They get their head down, they do good work, and they put it out, and people like it again. And that's when you get this kind of longevity. And it must be so hard in the culture that we have at the moment. It must be so hard. But that's why when I listened to the album, I thought, yeah, that's fine. I thought, you know what? That's exactly what it should be. It should be absolutely fine. It should just be an album. You go, oh yeah, that's good. And in a couple of years, she'll do something else. And a couple of years after that, she'll do something else.
Yeah, it'd be good if the politicians don't bandwagon on this one. I can't see. I mean, some of the songs, I can't really see which one they choose. I can't see Andy
Burnham doing a Kamala Harris.
No, I mean, piling onto that track that's sounds like an edging video. If I may.
Oh, can I talk about another album that I absolutely love?
You don't want to talk about edging videos? Okay, fine.
Listen, you go ahead if you need to. I will stick with November Rain, which sounds like an edging video.
Oh God, no!
Not really.
Please.
Neutral Milk Hotel, we did in the airplane over the sea, and that's an album that every indie kid in the whole world loves and was super massive. He has never recorded another record since. It's hard, man. It's hard if you're a creator and stuff comes out. You can react in one or two ways. You can either go into your shell, or you can go, I've sort of just got to get back
something out, and then yeah.
So can I give the last word to Joseph Heller?
Please.
So Joseph Heller, who I love, and after Catch-22, so an interviewer said to him, I don't think you've ever done anything as good as Catch-22. And Joseph Heller said, well, yeah, you're right, but who has? And, you're lucky to have these big Nevermind, Stone Roses, Brats. You're lucky to have them. And if you're smart, you can carry on your career and keep doing good work and keep making good music. But my God, the pressure of it is insane, right?
Yeah. Or M. Night Shyamalan.
Oh, that's a great example after Sixth Sense.
Yeah, after Sixth Sense, but also everything after that becomes more and more. There's a really good book about when he's making this film, The Lady in the Water, and there's a great book about it called The Man Who Heard Voices. It's incredibly pretentious.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's a journalist who's given full access to him for the making of this film that turns out to, spoiler, not be one to trouble the scorers.
That's a tough one to follow because it's so brilliantly. It's got such a brilliant, unique twist to it. A bit of I thought, okay, I need to just make sure I've got a brilliant twist for every single thing that I do now. And that's, he would have made more interesting films if there hadn't been quite as successful.
You're just chasing that first high. It's anyway. I recommend the album. Now, shall we talk about Letterboxd, which is the social media film discovery platform, which became huge in the pandemic. Lots of really bad things became huge in the pandemic, but this was one of the good ones.
Good one, yeah.
Via the app, and it's really interesting. It's like it's massive with Gen Z and kind of younger millennials, and it's a huge amount of people have discovered film culture this way. It's a discovery engine first, I guess, and it's pushed that generation in the direction of things like horror and world cinema and other sort of different genre things.
Lots of Japanese movies.
Yeah.
I mean, just describe what it is. It's sort of a repository of any movie ever, and just people review them and rate them. And there's
post about
loads
them.
And loads of lists. There's loads and loads of posts you can read. It's just any movie you like, you can do the deepest of deepest dives here. You can see everything ranked. You can see the top thrillers. You can see the
everyone
top
does their
movies
top
of all
four.
time.
Your Letterboxd top four is, but that's become a sort of form of, taste as an identity and a shorthand for yourself, a way of signalling status.
Yeah, and it sounds, there's a million things that are a bit like this, but it's just curated very, very well. There's two New Zealand guys, Matthew Buchanan and Carl von Rando, who originally came up with it. And there's just something about it. It has an aesthetic to it, an indie aesthetic to it, that it is appealing to go and visit. When you look at the reviews of films, you're like, oh, this is really interesting.
It does. But it does connect to the thing we were saying in our first item today, which is that like watching and then posting about it have now just sort of become two sides of the same coin.
Yes, you can't. If you watch a film, you think, I tell you who's going to be interested in my view on this. Everyone.
Yeah, everyone's a critic.
But the nice thing about Letterboxd actually is the top reviewers are actually rather interesting. And if you look through the top 500 films on Letterboxd, for example, you can tell it's very global because, there are a lot of Japanese movies on there. It's not all the usual suspects. In fact, I don't think Usual Suspects is in the top 100. There is stuff that you will discover there. However much of a cineast you might be, there is stuff there to discover. I absolutely love it as a website. I love, because I love a list, of course I do, but I love discovering new things. They have an amazing thing. They do this sort of video rental thing, and you have to pay like 15 quid to it's like buying a video in the old days, where they have films that just sort of played in festivals and never got a proper release, and you can watch these movies. You can put them on TV, and so it's the real deal. It has bona fides. It is interesting. It's intriguing. Whether it remains that way, we're about to find out, because it is up for sale, which is not always the best thing that can happen to someone.
It's up for sale. It's valued, I think, at about 250 million. And so we'll talk about why it is a desirable asset. There are lots of people who might be in for it.
Yeah.
Sony, Paramount, Versant, which is the Comcast sort of thing that already
like
owns
Netflix. You can sort of see it.
A24, which we'll get to.
Yeah.
So if you think Comcast owns that, Versant owns Rotten Tomatoes and Fandango, the kind of ticketing and pre-booking or whatever,
which have a similar vibe. Rotten Tomatoes has a similar vibe. This feels a bit more of a deeper dive, but it does a similar thing.
What's appealing to it is you have, for any of those companies who would want to integrate it into their corporate structure, is that you get direct access to film enthusiasts, obviously. You can influence discovery, and you can get kind of first party kind of taste data on things. It's very, very useful for marketing, quite obviously. Yeah. And mainly, it's really cheap. Like, look at the entertainment M&A prizes that might be around. There's not that much that costs 250 million.
Yeah.
And that is... But you do also have to be incredibly careful. And now people know it's for sale within the community, because it's a hyper-engaged community.
Everyone's worried.
They're very, very worried. There are these kind of like fan movements to kind of try and buy it themselves. The idea that A24 may wish to buy it, that would probably be the least offensive thing to lots of these.
Yes, because if you're on the site at the moment, one of the interesting things about it is, and you realise how rare it is in our culture. You look at Wikipedia and this, where it's kind of under-monetized. And you think, oh my God, thank God that something is under-monetized. I'm not constantly being driven towards something. I'm not constantly being sold to. There's bits of advertising, and there's a Patreon tier for power users, of which I am not one. But you are not. You don't feel you are constantly being fed by the algorithm, and you're not being constantly monetized by it. It still feels like an indie site. It feels like something you've stumbled upon that is a community, and those things are rarer and rarer, and usually they're quite niche. There's plenty of them, but they're niche. When you get something of this size and you're still going, oh my God, it still seems to be run by the users. But as you say, as soon as venture capitalists look at something that's undercapitalized, they like to capitalize.
Well, if you look at, it's possible. This is why I think perhaps A24 would be the best fit for it. I don't know, because that is obviously A24. It didn't even exist 15 years ago, and it's like modern art house, again, a young company. It deliberately cultivates fandoms and merchandise and socials and what it's made for internet culture. It thrives, by the way, their movies completely thrive on something like Letterboxd because they are all suited to internet culture and they all understand it.
I think A24 themselves say that The Brutalist was such a hit largely through Letterboxd. It was like one of the incredible sort of things that powered the success of that movie. And
people want to discover the other directors and their whole stable of auteurs and all of that. That's it. You can see that with it's amazing to some degree that A24 has been able to keep that kind of edginess and keep that. And a lot of people call it a cult and say their fans are like cult-like. They pay to carry around the merchandise. But you have to take our hat off completely. I should say, full disclosure, I have things in development with them. But on the TV side, but it would make sense for them to buy something like that. I mean, it would make sense, by the way, for all of these people to buy an asset that is of this price, and you can see how it could help. But many of these people could completely ruin it.
Yeah, there is a sort of a public benefit corporation called Intrinsic Entertainment Collaborative who are trying to raise money to buy it themselves. And I mean, it's possible, could happen. Because it has such an engaged community who'd all be happy to, chip in. But I don't want to fast forward 3 years and be on Letterboxd and just go, oh, this is not as good as it used to be.
They've destroyed it, yeah. Because at the moment they own such a dedicated audience.
Yeah.
And yes, it would be interesting to see how it plays out. I don't think that Intrinsic will get it, but
no, I don't think they will either, because there's people with deeper pockets who could do things with it that it would fit into other businesses far more. So if you don't use Letterboxd, and it's Letterboxd without the letter E at the end. If you're interested in photos, really, really worth having a look at. I guarantee you'll find something that you find interesting very, very quickly in it. It's an example of just something that works for all of its members, I think, and that's very rare. Plus, we get Goalhanger to buy it.
Yeah.
Just then we can hang out with them.
Yes.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Any recommendations this week?
Well, it sort of fits into what we've been talking about, but I read a very interesting book called Rate This Book by Benji Wilson, which is about how 5-star ratings took over the world, touches on much of which we've spoken about today. And it's really, really interesting how this one thing has come to dominate almost everything. And you think you understand like how much of it there is in our world, but you haven't scratched the surface. So that's an interesting one. It's called Rate This Book by Benji Wilson.
Oh, that's very cool. I want to add to my previous recommendation of Widow's Bay, which is on Apple, because I'd seen the first few episodes that had dropped, and now I've seen the whole thing is all dropped. So genuinely, it's brilliant. But I do need to say it does get really scary. So it remains funny, but it's like really scary as well.
Apple have got so many good shows at the moment.
Yeah, but just if you started watching it and it was too scary for you, I apologise. And if you're going to start watching it now, it's brilliant. And Matthew Rhys's performance is insanely good. But it's really scary as well. So what I recommend also is there's a new series of my favourite show on BBC One, which is Fake or Fortune, where Fiona Bruce and Philip Mould take people who think they might have masterpieces and they go through all the verification processes. And it talks about art history. There's lots of science in it, lots of human stories. And the first one this week is about a woman in Liverpool who believes she has a Fabergé flower.
Ooh.
And it's such a great story as well. The thing I love about that is no. Oh, no. Oh, and it's just they tell it brilliantly. They tell human stories with it as well. It's one of those shows that just keeps on giving. So Fake or Fortune.
We will be back on Thursday with a Q&A.
We will.
And you will be bringing us, for our members, a very special episode of the World Cup.
It's the World Cup of movie quotes. So the greatest movie quotes of all time.
I'm dying for that one.
Yeah, it's really good. And it's really... And
that's a good idea.
Trying to work out what works as a movie quote, what doesn't work. And yeah, it's myself, Bella Hull and Ivo Graham, and we will let you know which movie quote the British public thinks is the greatest of all time. And we are also just in the midst of recording our History of James Bond as well, which will be out for members soon, which we're really having fun
I'm
doing.
really enjoying it. I've said a number of inappropriate things in the first recording. But
my God, you said something so inappropriate
it wasn't.
in the first recording. I think because you explained afterwards why it wasn't inappropriate, but at the time it sounded it. So listen out for that when that comes out. See you on Thursday.
See you on Thursday.